Hey everybody, it's your Sassy Gal. Welcome back to Sassy Gal Preppin'. I'm at the park and was just kind of hanging out here, enjoying the peace and quiet and the fresh air, and then it started to sprinkle. So anyway, I decided to come in my car and just kind of share my thoughts. I came to the realization today, or the discovery maybe, I guess, that my family, I don't think we're all on the same page with this prepping stuff and this just say no and the I will not comply kind of thing. Now, I can say that my husband and I are on the same page, but I'm not so sure about my kids. I have adult children, age 22, 19, and 16 and a half. They all have their own opinions. They seem to be well grounded. However, they are from a generation that is obviously not the generation and the type of society and culture that I lived in. So of course, when I grew up, we didn't have computers and phones and internet and stuff. Well, I mean, cell phones, we have phones. So this is a lot different for them. The topic of conversation that I brought up just randomly, I happened to be just chatting about the video that I saw. It was about the congressman was talking about your DNA that could be used for a bioweapon that would be targeted for you, so they could literally kind of take out you. That led to a huge discussion, because what do we have in today's times? It seems to be really popular, spitting in a little tube and sending it off to 23andMe to find out, you know, all of their background and ethnicities and, you know, their history. Spitting in tubes for home tests for cooties, swabs of the inside of your mouth or your cheek or up your nose, and we don't know where all of that goes. Now, if you're going to a doctor, that's one thing. You're going to a doctor and having these tests done, that's great. It's a little more of a controlled environment there, and you have HIPAA and all that stuff. But when you're standing in line, or you're going to your random drugstore, or going to a mass site and offer up your arm, or your nose or your mouth or whatever, and be probed and prodded and poked. You're sending in your DNA, and you're sending it off to a place that you don't know, a lab or whatever, and you don't know what they're doing with it, because you've sent your information in and they have all of this history on you plus your DNA and all this. They will contact you and say, oh, we've noticed that in your family line, that there's a history of colon cancer or something like that. And they do it all in the name of health and well-being. Okay, so we're all aware of these things, and this is another way of just being able to target you and be able to get more information about you. Now, I understand. I have a YouTube channel. I have social medias. I've had them since 2008, 2009. I understand that there has been certain data and information collected on me. I've done a search on myself, and I'm creeped out a little bit that I was able to find so much information about myself just by Googling my name and how far back it went and who I was connected with. Talk about contact tracing. Oh my gosh. My unique identity, as far as something that I can identify for me, is my fingerprint, and it's also my DNA. When that's gone, if someone were to steal it, that would be very, very bad. That's the only identifier for me. So we're talking about privacy, we're talking about identity, right? And you give this away and you give this away, there isn't going to be anything left. It's going to be hard to prove that you are you. And so I'm having a conversation with, my oldest daughter, and, you think you know your family until you don't. She and I were disagreeing about being compliant, because she said, if I have to get food and stuff, and they said, you have to use your fingerprint, well then okay. She also said that, that everything is going digital, the money is going digital, which she's right? And she says, you know what, they're going to do what they want to do, and we can't stop them. And she's right. She said, you go ahead and fight the FBI, and you go ahead and fight that. And I said, no, we're not fighting the FBI. We are fighting for freedom, and that means that each one does it. Each one person stands up and says, I will not comply. I'm not going to give you my saliva. I'm not going to give you my arm. I'm not going to give you my fingerprint and this kind of stuff. And she says, well, we can do that now because we still have a choice. She says, there may not be a choice one day. And I said, that's okay. That's true, because we all in our household a biblical worldview, and we know that there is going to be coming a day, because the Bible says that it's going to happen, that there's going to be a time when we have to take a mark, and that will be the only way that we can buy or sell or exchange goods. So we know it's coming. We don't know if we will be here for that or not, right? And I told her, I says, the only way that we're going to be able to ensure that we have freedom is to keep fighting for it. These are personal freedoms. These are our personal things that we don't give them away. We especially do not give them away at random. We have bodily autonomy, and we have our identity, and we have our rights that we were born with, and we fight for those. We're blessed in America because we have a constitution that protects the rights that we already have, inalienable rights, and that we have a constitution that protects them. And we are supposed to have leaders who have sworn an oath to protect the constitution, which protects our rights that we were born with. Okay, and then we have an individual responsibility to stand up for them and to protect them ourselves, so we just don't give them away. In the Bible, and we call them in the Bible days, there were two brothers, Jacob and Esau. Esau was the older brother. You're going to get the Sassy Gal version today. Jacob was back at the camp. He was making some food, okay? Dinner was smelling great, had something good going on. Esau comes back in from hunting and from the field and everything. He was tired, he was hot, he was extremely hungry, to the point that when he smelled the food, he says, give me some of that food because I am just dying of hunger. And Jacob was like, hey, wait a minute, before we do that, before I give you this food, I want you to give me your birthright. Esau gave up his birthright, which was identity, position, honor, tradition, all of that. It was all in this, tied in with the birthright, and he gave it away for food. And now he probably didn't think that Jacob was pretty serious about it. He's like, shut up, man, give me some of that food. But a deal was made, and then Jacob got the birthright, which was not supposed to happen under Jewish customs. The younger did not get the birthright. That particular part of the story is that food was used to get Esau to give up his birthright, something that he didn't feel that was very important or appreciate very much. I say that to emphasize the point that your fingerprint and your DNA are all that you have, and when those go, when those are given away, and your rights, if you are just giving away your privacy rights, then you will not get them back. And there's a lesson there, okay? It's like, what are you willing to give up? Are you willing to give up these things because you're hungry? Have you thought about that? What would you do if you didn't have any food and the only way you could get food was to provide your fingerprint in order to shop and to get food so that you could feed your family? And it's not like this stuff doesn't exist, because Amazon has created a bioscan of your hand. How easy it would be. You're a mom and you've got your arms full and you need to pay for your stuff, and you can't really get your ID out. Maybe you can't get to your phone. You just scan your palm. The Postal Service has a fingerprint ID. They're already using it for background checks for security, higher ups and stuff. But the postal ID was one way of ID verification for things so that your mail is secure and so that your identity is secure. And so they do the fingerprint ID, and then that goes to the FBI. Well, what is the FBI going to do with it? Are they storing it? Do they keep it forever? Why do they need that? These are the things and the ways that all of this stuff is going to creep in. And I guess the question I want to ask you, and I'm asking myself, is where are we going to draw the line? How far are you willing to go to say, I will not comply? I think of Jacob and Esau all the time. I think about that story and how Esau was so quick to give it up. And that's just how, this is where we're at today. Yeah, whatever. You've got all my ID on Facebook. I don't have anything to hide. Just go ahead. No big deal. Until someone steals your identity, or until there is some kind of a hack on your account. And we have a culture where people are just giving away this stuff willy-nilly. They just sign without thinking about it. They sign without reading the documents. They don't take into consideration what would actually happen. Someone else has my DNA. That's not cool. It shouldn't be cool. The argument that we're having in my house a lot is that, the government's just going to do what they want, so we better deal with it, And while I agree to that to some point, we can't just sit back and let the government do what they want. That's the whole point, is that the government is in our hands. We're the ones that are in charge, literally. And we have to be those people like Susan B. Anthony, who stood up in front of the judge, who accused her of committing a crime just because she was a woman and voted. And she stood face to face with that judge, and she stood up for herself and for her individual right to vote, because she had a voice and she shouldn't be silenced because she was a woman. She was a lone woman standing in a sea of men, really. But in a sea of opposition, sometimes you have to be willing to stand alone. Standing up for what's right means that you might be standing alone. Are you willing to do that? Have you thought about these things? This is why I talk about getting mentally ready, because these are the situations, because you might have family in your own home, under your roof, that feels differently. And I don't know what I would do if someone came and my daughter decided to be like Esau and be like, I don't care, I'm hungry, here you go. And then she's lost forever in the system, or she has to suffer, like under slavery or something because she was hungry. These young graduates of high school and college have not seen a whole lot of positive anything, I would say, within the last 8 to 10 years. They see a country that is, they're just like, why would I want to fight for this country? And I'm like, you're not fighting for the country. That's not really why our forefathers and the people in that era, when we were just this fledgling little country, we weren't necessarily fighting for the country. We were fighting for freedom from a tyrannical, oppressive king. That is what we are fighting for. We are fighting for individual freedom, and each one stands up and does it. A lot of people I talked with over these last couple of years, they didn't want to stand up against their employers or their big companies when they wanted to say no to the mandates. And no, right? Because mandates aren't laws. Say it with me. Mandates aren't laws. They didn't want to go against or stand against their employer. And so a lot of them succumbed to the mandate, but you can't take that back. Once you get jabbed, you can't take it back. This isn't meant to be a video about that, okay? It's a decision that once you make that decision, you can't go back. And, so Esau made that decision and he couldn't go back. You make that decision to spit in a tube or hand over your arm or a fingerprint, and you can't go back. There's a lot of decisions that are going to be made, in these next handful of years. You have to really think about them and be careful, because you won't be able to take them back. It's not a reversible decision. I want people to understand that you are fighting for your individual freedom in this race. This is what it's about. So we prepare by knowing what our rights are. You know how to fight for them. What we have to focus on is that we are fighting for freedom from a tyrannical, oppressive government, which I'm afraid to say is what our government has turned into. I know a lot of people see it, but a lot of people are focusing on how big the government is, how much of a machine it is, how controlling they are, because big tech will come in here and shut down your channel if they don't like what you're saying, or they'll remove your account, your social media account. They'll shut that down too, right? Because you have an opinion. And so then we take our voice and we go somewhere else and we get the message out, and then we take our voice and go somewhere else. Powers that be and those that are like them do not like independent thought. There's people that don't like freedom. People I don't know what that is. Why people don't want freedom. I don't know why anybody would not want to be free to do their stuff. But no, it seems that people want someone to lord over them, because freedom is too vulnerable, I guess, or it's too much responsibility. And we do have a responsibility to keeping the freedom. We're fighting for freedom, and people they don't want freedom. People want to rule over others, and that goes all the way back to the beginning of where Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden. That is the curse of the sin, was that it would be the desire of one to rule over another. And that's been our downfall ever since. If you gotten to this point in the video, thank you for watching. Put #freedom down in the comments so I know that you got to this point and you're listening. I love y'all, and I want to thank you for listening to me share my heart with you. This is a longer video than I normally post, but it's important. I want y'all to make sure that you know that you have rights, and I want you to fight for them, and talk to your kids and find out where they're at. especially your adult children, okay? You know, because they're the next ones that are going to be voting, and you know, the next generation of leaders, and just find out where they're at, and hopefully we can encourage them to understand that it's the freedom that we're fighting for, not some country or some flag or whatever else. It's freedom, individual freedom. So thanks, y'all. I love you. I'll catch you in the next video.